In the darkest depths of the ocean, more than 600 meters below the surface where no sunlight ever reaches, there exists a creature that has been inhabiting the abyssal zones of the planet for 183 million years. It is not a legend nor a science fiction creature, it is real, scientifically documented, and its existence has just revolutionized what biologists believed they knew about the evolution of cephalopods, one of the most intelligent and fascinating groups of animals that the history of life on Earth has produced. It is called Vampiroteuthis infernalis, which in Latin literally means the vampire squid from hell, and a study recently published in the scientific journal iScience, produced by Japanese and Austrian researchers, has just deciphered its complete genome with results so surprising that scientists describe it as the Rosetta Stone of the evolution of modern cephalopods. Leave your like, subscribe, and share. Let us begin. The name Vampire Squid from Hell sounds like something out of an underwater horror film, and one must admit that those who named this creature had an undeniable talent for drama. But the biological reality of Vampiroteuthis infernalis is, if possible, more fascinating than any fiction its name might suggest. To begin with, despite its name, the vampire squid from hell is technically neither a squid nor an octopus. It is something older and stranger than either of them. A separate branch of the evolutionary tree of cephalopods that diverged from other lineages so long ago that biologists have assigned it its own taxonomic order, the Vampiromorphida, of which it is the only known living representative today. This makes it what biologists call a living fossil, a species that has survived virtually unchanged for hundreds of millions of years, while the world around it was transformed in radical ways. Physically, the vampire squid from hell measures approximately 30 centimeters in length, a modest size that contrasts enormously with the ferocity its name suggests. Its body is a dark reddish color that in the abyssal depths can appear completely black, an advantage for a creature that needs to be invisible in an environment of total darkness. It has 8 arms like an octopus, but also retains 2 additional retractile filaments that are vestiges of the additional tentacles that characterize squids, perfectly reflecting its evolutionary position midway between the 2 great groups of cephalopods. Its eyes are, in proportion to its body size, some of the largest in the animal kingdom, an essential adaptation for detecting the minimum flashes of bioluminescence that are the only source of visual information in the depths where it lives. Contrary to what its name might suggest, the vampire squid from hell does not feed on blood, nor is it a particularly aggressive predator. Its diet consists mainly of marine detritus, the organic remains that continuously fall from the upper ocean layers toward the depths, what oceanographers call marine snow. This feeding strategy, which requires very little energy to execute, is perfectly suited to the abyssal environment where the Vampiroteuthis lives. An environment where food is scarce and where the creatures that have survived are those that have learned to maximize their energy efficiency. The vampire squid can also produce clouds of bioluminescence to confuse predators, a defensive capability that in the total darkness of the depths proves extraordinarily effective. The specimen whose genome was sequenced for the study published in iScience came to the hands of the researchers in a way that the scientists themselves described as fortuitous. The animal was accidentally caught in the fishing implements of a research vessel from Tokai University in Japan, conducting research work in Suruga Bay. Suruga Bay, on the Pacific coast of the island of Honshu, is one of Japan's deepest bays, with depths reaching 2,500 meters, making it a suitable habitat for a creature that normally lives between 600 and 1,200 meters depth. The fact that the specimen was captured accidentally during a routine research operation underscores the rarity of direct encounters with this species, which, despite being distributed in all the world's oceans in tropical and subtropical zones, is extremely difficult to observe or capture given the environments in which it lives. The research team that carried out the genome sequencing included scientists from Japan and from Austria, particularly from the University of Vienna, and their results were published in the journal iScience, with a series of findings that have generated a notable level of enthusiasm in the scientific community specializing in evolutionary biology and mollusk genomics. The first and most immediately impactful of those findings is the size of the Vampiroteuthis infernalis genome, which occupies more than 11 gigabases, making it the largest cephalopod genome ever deciphered to date. To put that number in perspective, the human genome occupies approximately 3 gigabases, which means that the genome of the vampire squid from hell is approximately 4 times larger than ours, A 30-centimeter creature inhabiting the ocean depths has 4 times more genetic material than a human being, which in itself says something profound about the biological complexity that can be contained in life forms that we tend to underestimate. Leave your like, subscribe, and share. But the size of the genome, though surprising, is not the most scientifically revolutionary finding of the study. What has truly captured the attention of evolutionary biologists is what the structure of that genome reveals about the evolutionary history of cephalopods. The group that includes octopuses, squids, cuttlefish, and nautiluses, all descendants of a common ancestor that lived more than 300 million years ago. To understand the importance of this finding, one must first understand the evolutionary relationship between the two great groups of modern cephalopods, the octopodiforms and the decapodiforms. The octopodiforms are the octopuses, creatures with 8 arms, without an internal shell, with a soft and extremely flexible body, and with cognitive capabilities that have made them the most studied invertebrates by neuroscientists interested in the evolution of intelligence. The decapodiformes are the squids and cuttlefish, creatures with 10 appendages, generally with some type of internal support structure, and with a body organization and biology significantly different from that of octopuses. These two groups diverged evolutionarily more than 300 million years ago, and since then have followed evolutionary trajectories so divergent that at first glance it is hard to imagine that they share a relatively recent common ancestor in geological terms. What the genome of Vampiroteuthis infernalis has allowed to reveal is what that common ancestor was like. According to Oleg Simakov, genomicist and lead author of the study, the vampire squid is positioned midway between octopuses and squids, and its genome preserves a genetic heritage that predates the divergence of both lineages. By comparing the chromosomal structure of Vampiroteuthis with that of other previously sequenced cephalopods, the researchers found something extraordinary. Despite being taxonomically an octopodiform, that is, being more closely related to octopuses, the vampire squid maintains the chromosomal organization typical of decapodiforms, the one that characterizes squids. This means that the vampire squid has preserved for 183 million years the genetic architecture that the common ancestor of octopuses and squids had before the two lineages separated and began to evolve along different paths. Researcher Emis Toth from the University of Vienna and participant in the study explained it with a clarity that makes the importance of the finding accessible. The vampire squid preserves a genetic heritage that predates both lineages and therefore allows us to observe directly the earliest phases of cephalopod evolution. It is like having access to a photograph of the common ancestor of octopuses and squids, not reconstructed from indirect inferences, but preserved in real time in the genome of a living creature that inhabits today the ocean depths. This is the reason why researchers describe Vampiroteuthis infernalis as the Rosetta Stone of cephalopods, a reference to the famous stone that allowed Egyptian hieroglyphics to be deciphered by presenting the same text in 3 different writing systems. The genome of the vampire squid acts as a reference point that allows the evolutionary history of modern cephalopods to be deciphered by preserving the ancestral genetic architecture that connects the two great lineages. One of the most specific and most informative findings of the study is what the analysis of the Vampiroteuthis genome reveals about the direction in which octopuses evolved. The results demonstrated that the common ancestor of octopuses and squids, the one that lived more than 300 million years ago, had a genetic map more akin to that of modern squids. This means that it was the octopuses and not the squids that experienced the most radical evolutionary changes throughout history. The octopus lineage experienced a process of massive chromosomal reorganization that biologists call fusion with mixing, a process in which chromosomes that existed separately fused with each other in ways that fundamentally reorganized the genome architecture. This reorganization, which was massive and irreversible, compacted the octopus genome and gave rise to the extraordinary adaptations that characterize modern octopuses, including their ability to change color and shape, their extreme bodily flexibility, and possibly their advanced cognitive capabilities. This conclusion has implications that go beyond the biology of cephalopods. The study demonstrates that the extraordinary diversity of current cephalopod species, a group that includes everything from the tiny blue-ringed octopus to the 12-meter giant squid, is not primarily due to the appearance of new genes but to large-scale chromosomal reorganization. In other words, Evolution does not always work by adding new genetic material, but by reorganizing what already exists in ways that produce radically different results. It is a principle that probably has much broader applications in general evolutionary biology, and that the vampire squid from hell has contributed to illuminating with a clarity that no other species could have provided. There is something deeply poetic in the fact that a 30-centimeter creature that has been swimming in the darkness of ocean depths for 183 million years, completely ignorant of the scientific debates that human beings carry out in its name, contains in its genome the answers to questions about the evolution of life that biologists have been trying to resolve for decades. The Vampiroteuthis infernalis survived 5 mass extinctions, the impact of the asteroid that killed the dinosaurs, the drift of continents, and climatic transformations that completely reshaped the planet. And it did so by remaining virtually unchanged in the depths where the stability of environmental conditions means that evolutionary pressure is less than in the more variable surface environments. And by surviving thus, by resisting change while everything else around it changed, it preserved a genetic treasure that today allows us to read the oldest history of one of the most extraordinary groups of animals that evolution has produced on this planet. Leave your like, subscribe, and share. Until next time.